Good morning, everyone. Wait for the video to stop. Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. Please find your seats if you are still coming in. Thank you so much for being here. And for those of you who are joining us online, welcome as well. My name is Neela Ghoshal. I'm the Senior Director of Law, Policy, and Research at Outright International. I'm based in Washington, D.C. Glad to be up in New York, which feels like a breath of fresh air. Whether you are in the room with us today or Zooming in, thank you so much for joining us at our 11th annual Outsummit. And thanks as well to our generous supporters, Deutsche Bank, for providing us with this beautiful space, and of course, to Outright's other supporters as well who have made this event possible. Before we begin, a few quick housekeeping details. There are both gendered and gender-neutral bathrooms way down the hall that way. You will get your steps in going to the restroom. They are across the elevator bank where you came in, to the left and down the hallway. There are photographers and videographers in the room, as you can see. If you cannot be captured in photo or video for any reason, please make sure that you have a red dot on your name badge. You can get that at the front desk. The program that is streaming today will not include images of the audience, but just in case anything is captured, we recommend not sitting in the first couple rows if you have one of those red dots on and you don't want to be captured at all, including kind of parts of your head. Our host, Deutsche Bank, has also asked that we avoid capturing the artwork in the halls in our photos and videos. So if you're taking photos and videos out in the hall, particularly if you plan to post them on social media, please try to avoid capturing the artwork. Most of our sessions today have a Q&A session. For those who are joining online, you can post your questions in the Zoom Q&A at any time during the session. And for those who are in the room, we will give an indication that you can come and line up at the microphones to ask your questions when you're ready. Apologies to those who are in the middle, a little bit further away from the microphones, but we've got enough space, so be generous to your fellow attendees and make space for them to find their ways to the microphone. If anyone would like to ask a question and getting to the microphone is a challenge, we can, of course, accommodate that. And finally, you can find printed programs at the name tag table outside. And now I'm happy to quickly turn over to Maria Schoden, our Executive Director, for introductory remarks, followed by the Permanent Representative of Chile to the United Nations, Ambassador Paula Narvaez.
Thank you so much, Neela. And thank you everyone for being here with us online and in the room here at Deutsche Bank. We are facing the worst backlash globally ever for LGBTIQ people. And I know all of you know this in one way or another. And so I'm not going to go through all the examples I could pull, but we just published a report about elections from the super election year of 2024, which we have talked about in previous Outsummits. And 85% of the countries that we looked at that had elections had anti-LGBTIQ messages in their campaigns. And I think that it really demonstrates what a global situation we're facing. We're hearing from country after country how young people, I mean, I feel like I've been saying throughout my career in the LGBTIQ movement for 25 years that, younger people, things are changing. And now we're seeing in many countries how young people, especially boys and young men, are actually less tolerant. This backlash is very real, and I don't think we have seen the peak of it yet. Also, there's a funding crisis. LGBTIQ movements have never had enough money. Outright was founded 35 years ago at a time when no governments thought we should have any rights, and certainly no governments were giving us any money. But things have improved in the last couple of decades. But that, of course, means that the loss of funding, when the US pulled out of funding, the Global Equality Fund has closed, and we know other governments are also looking at reducing their funding. This is a very real situation that groups across the world are dealing with. I didn't mean to start on this gloomy note, but I guess I did. Sometimes you just speak what's top of mind. But to me, it also says that things like Outsummit, where we come together, we strategize together, we discuss, we see our partnerships in action, becomes even more important. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't possible, if it wasn't made possible by Deutsche Bank, who we actually at Outright have a long-standing relationship with, and a partnership that goes beyond an annual convening. They host the ambassadors dinner with the UN LGBTI core group. They hosted our humanitarian convening last year. We have partnership that's very substantial. We have Lesbian Global in the room, represented by Kathy and Naomi, who actually, I think, got introduced to Outright almost to the day 11 years ago. If I went back through my emails this morning. And Lesbian Global and Outright is deepening our partnership and launching an initiative to advance LGBTQ plus economic empowerment in parts of the world where this at the moment is even more important than it has been. I know COPPA is in the room. We've deepened our partnership around monitoring and evaluation. And there are many, many more in this room from near and far where our partnerships are going to be even more important going forward in order for us to counter this backlash. At the end of the day, and I'll be coming back at the end of the day, literally, we will be successful because we are working together and because we are creative and innovative and really smart. So I think I'm supposed to wrap up very quickly so we can get into the meatiness of the program today. And first, I want to introduce Ambassador Paula Narvaez from the UN LGBTI core group. Please, Paula.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to Outright, its executive director, and the entire team for this kind and important invitation to speak in my capacity as co-chair of the UN LGBTI core group. I also wish to warmly acknowledge all activists, friends, and partner organizations who continue to champion this vital cause. You remind us that activism is not only about resistance, but also about imagination, about believing that a different, fairer world is possible. So let me begin by thanking you for keeping this moment alive and for keeping hope alive. When Chile assumed the co-chairmanship of the United Nations LGBTI core group, alongside the Kingdom of the Netherlands, we knew we were taking on this responsibility at a difficult moment. The global context has not been easy. In many countries, we see increasing polarization and organized attempts to roll back progress on gender equality and diversity. But something remarkable has happened this year. Instead of discouragement, we have felt renewed energy. More countries are asking to join the core group. More colleagues within the UN are showing interest. And above all, there is a stronger conviction that this coalition represents something bigger than a political agenda. It represents a community of countries and people who believe in freedom, equality, and human dignity. In a time of division, the core group has become a meeting point for those who still believe in the power of cooperation. And that spirit has translated into real, tangible progress. One of the moments that truly gave us hope this year was the renewal of the mandate of the UN Independent Expert on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. Those of us who work in human rights diplomacy know how closely these votes are followed and how fragile they can be. In 2022, the renewal passed with 23 votes in favor, 17 against, and 7 abstentions. This year, in 2025, the result was 29 in favor, 15 against, and only 3 abstentions. These numbers tell a story of progress. They show growing confidence in the mandate's professionalism, its legitimacy, and its technical quality. But behind those numbers are people, advocates, diplomats, and activists who never gave up on dialogue. I understand that an extraordinary activist from Ghana is joining us at Outsummit today. My colleague Andres, who is in Qatar at this moment, who leads our delegation in the third committee and coordinates the LGBTI core group, has often shared with me the many meaningful exchanges the group has had with activists, whether during CSW, Advocacy Week, or other dialogues throughout the year. And he told me about one conversation with Fafali in particular, where she said, "Don't give up on my country, keep talking to us." And a few months later, when the Human Rights Council voted on the renewal of the independent experts mandate, Ghana, which had always voted no, decided to abstain. It was a small step, very small, we can say, but a profoundly important one. A reminder that change happens when dialogue continues, when governments, activists, and organizations like Outright work together toward a common goal. That, to me, is what multilateralism looks like when it works. Imperfect, patient, sometimes very slow, but always moving forward, bringing us closer to a world where human dignity truly has no borders. That renewed spirit led us to take a more strategic approach. Together with our partners, we adopted a 2025-2028 strategy for the LGBTI core group built on 5 pillars that turn conviction into action. That renewed spirit led us to take a more strategic approach together with our partners. First, defending inclusive language in UN resolutions so that visibility and recognitions are never erased. Second, supporting and strengthening our collaboration with the UN system. Third, expanding membership, bringing in new countries and creating an observer category for emerging allies. Fourth, strengthening communication, focusing on the real human cost of violence and discrimination. And fifth, building alliance with civil society, with the private sector, with other multilateral platforms that share our vision. This is not a bureaucratic roadmap. It is a collective promise, a way of saying that even when progress is difficult, we will not stand still. We will continue to build bridges and widen the circle of those who choose dignity over indifference. Because at the end of the day, what we do at the United Nations only matters if it resonates beyond its walls. That is why Outsummit is so meaningful. You are the bridge between global discussions and local realities, between the diplomatic language of resolutions and the lived experience of communities and families. You remind us that every side event, every joint statement, every negotiation has value only if it helps someone live more freely, more safely, more authentically. I come from Chile, a country that in just 2 decades transformed from being one of the most conservative in Latin America to one recognized for advancing women's rights and LGBTI inclusion. We passed a gender identity law, and I can say proudly today before you that I was part of the process because I was minister at that time of former President Bachelet, and she told me, Paula, you need to pass this law. And I worked very hardly with civil society organizations. And even though we cannot pass at our period, we left that law at the door of the Congress so the next government could pass the law. So I feel so proud. That's why I'm today stand before you as well with this transparency, telling you this story. We created as well a trans health program and developed a national protocol for LGBTIQ plus victims of crimes. It wasn't easy and it didn't happen overnight, but it showed us that when human rights are treated not as an abstract principles, but as a concrete commitments, societies change and they change for the better. Of course, we are not naive. We know that there is a pushback, often organized, loud, and well-funded. But we also know that for every attempt to roll back progress, there is a coalition ready to defend it. For every voice that spreads fear, there are hundreds that speak of love, freedom, and solidarity. And that gives me profound optimism. I have seen it at the UN, where more countries are now willing to stand up for equality. I see it in communities where young people refuse to hide who they are. And I see it here in this room, a reminder that courage is contagious. Governments alone cannot solve the world's challenges. Real and lasting change must be built with society, not only for society. This is why the alliance between activism and diplomacy is so essential. We need both the streets and the conference rooms. We need the passion of movements and the persistence of institutions. And we need to remember that democracy itself depends on inclusion, that a society cannot be truly free if it excludes part of its people. Each of you here, activists, donors, allies, plays a role in keeping that democratic spirit alive. Every campaign, every safe space, every classroom conversation, every act of visibility matters. Together, you are shaping a world where love and dignity are not privilege, but rights. So as we look ahead, let us hold on the lessons of this year, that even in dark times, there are lights that refuse to go out, that behind every vote, there is a story, and that behind every story, there is courage. Let us keep telling those stories and writing new ones, because as long as we do, there will always be reason to hope, reason to act, and reason to believe that a world without discrimination is not a dream, it is a direction. As we begin this Outsummit, I truly hope it becomes a space for a rich and constructive discussion and an opportunity to renew our shared commitment and to drive forward concrete initiatives that advance the rights and dignity of LGBTI persons everywhere. With love, thank you.